So let me ask you, is surrender a weakness or a strength? This is the Warrior Mind podcast number 737. I'm Greg Swanson, and today we're going to be discussing giving up versus surrender, the conscious warrior's paradox. So most men confuse surrender with weakness, and I was one of these for a very long time, right? There's giving up, there's quitting, there's surrendering. All of them are associated with weakness, but they see it as quitting and a loss of control or failing to endure when we surrender. And there's a very subtle difference that we're going to go over in this podcast, right? But the conscious warrior knows better. And the conscious part is that being aware, right? And so the paradox of giving up versus surrender is one of the most vital distinctions a man can make on his path to mastery. Because if we think all of them are just releasing or giving up, then we may not be able to embrace the power of surrender. While giving up is resignation, surrender is a conscious release. It's not weakness, it's alignment. We're surrendering to the circumstances, we're surrendering to something, and we are aligning ourselves with that event that's happening. So let's just go over again real quick what a conscious warrior is. I've covered this in other podcasts and just going to cover it again in relation to surrender, right? A conscious warrior is not defined by brute force, but by inner mastery. We often think of warriors as big, burly individuals that go in there and bust through some, and like Juggernaut on X-Men and stuff like that. But really, what a conscious warrior has is inner mastery. So that inner is the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual. Yes, there's the physical part of it, but it's the inner mastery that controls the external part. And he balances the four pillars of physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. All of those are together. They're connected. They can't be separated, although many unconscious individuals and men think they can be separated, but they cannot. So he chooses awareness over reaction. He's aware of what he's feeling, aware of what's going on, instead of just having his buttons pushed. And he's responsibility over blame and presence over distractions, meaning he's choosing how to respond. He's choosing how to acknowledge certain situations. And the conscious warrior understands that true strength isn't about consistent and constant control. Although one of the four C's in mental strength is control, but it's your own control. Control what you can. Control your reactions, control your emotions, control how you see things, control what you say, all of that. That doesn't mean you're in constant control. It's being aware of those things as well. And it's about knowing when to act with force and when to yield with trust. That's probably the biggest one, is when do we go, and how long do we hit our head against a wall or try to do something before we yield to what's happening? We'll use business for an example. Maybe you're doing so many things. You're doing Facebook, TikTok, this and everything, and you're not getting it. You're just hitting your head against the wall, and perhaps just need to back off and surrender for a while and see what things happen. If we keep trying to hit our head against the wall and not taking that breath, we're not going to be able to observe the results and change the behavior. So the paradox of giving up versus surrender, right? Giving up is resignation, it's apathy, it's quitting. I don't care, I don't need that, right? Sour grapes, if you will. Where surrender is a conscious release and a trust in alignment with our higher power. So you surrender to, I'm not getting the results I want, and I know they're going to come in at a certain point with doing other things, right? But it's a conscious release, because when we try to force things, when we try to force it a lot, we tend to get a little bit anxious, a little bit frazzled, and that in itself causes distraction and misalignment. But when we can sit back and surrender to what's happening, how does the event align with our beliefs and our values and our purpose? Maybe it doesn't align, but we didn't know that because we were so busy trying not to quit. But when we surrendered, that's when the quiet came, and we noticed there may be a misalignment, right? In the metaphor, giving up is like dropping the sword in defeat. Surrender is sheathing the sword with confidence. So you're in a battle, right? Somebody comes after you. You drop the sword. Oh, okay, that's quitting. They won. But surrendering is, okay, I'm going to put the sword in the sheath. I have confidence that I know what's going to happen. I have confidence that I'm going to be okay. Big, big difference, right? And so let's begin that journey of surrender, right? One is awareness of inner resistance. When we can feel that tension in our body, the shallow breath that's happening, the tight muscles, the tight jaw, all of that is this inner resistance to what's happening. But if we don't know we have it, we can't release it. So the first thing is to be aware of this inner resistance. And then we want to release control without losing our direction. So we want to release, I got to control this. This has to happen. This happen. No, I trust that things are going to happen for the right reason, and my direction is still going to be in the same way. Some people will release control and take another direction. Well, that's just avoiding, and that's not surrendering, that's bypassing. So when we surrender, we know that there's a time when we just have to give up the control, give up that, and then we surrender, but we still maintain the same direction. And then we have practices such as breath work, mindfulness, journaling, embodiment. All of these help us become aware and release this inner tension so that we can surrender without beating ourselves up that we're quitting, right? And so that breath work comes in handy. I covered that many times. That mindfulness is being aware of what we're feeling, being aware of what we want, and maybe hitting our head against the wall so many times isn't for us. We just have to sit back and surrender to it and trust that the right opportunities will come along. And so when we have surrender, there's certain benefits that we can acknowledge from that. Clarity of mind, right? When we are able to just surrender and let go, the mental fog goes, where if we are just still stuck, and even if we quit, we run it through our head. We go, "Wow, you're a loser. You should have done this." And we have this ongoing dialogue when we give up or quit. When we surrender, it's just we surrender. We surrender the inner talk, we surrender the inner resistance, and then there's less mental fog. And then we have this emotional release right with it. When we surrender, just take that breath and let go. And that helps us transform stress into flow. And then becomes a stronger leader presence. When we can surrender and demonstrate that it's not a weakness, it's a strength, the people who we are leading will see that as well. But if we're constantly trying to break down something, they're going to think that force is the only way, and it's not. Sometimes that resilience and that grit and the mental strength is required, and then there's this times to let go and trust. And then there's that spiritual alignment and inner freedom when we surrender. When we surrender, there's a bit of a faith with it. And this is not religion, it's just a spiritual. There's a faith that something good or better is going to happen. And it may not be the way we expect it. And there's that inner freedom where we don't have that buildup, and our stomach is getting an ulcer and we can't breathe and all that. All of that is gone when we have that spiritual alignment. So here's some final thoughts, right? Giving up versus surrender are not the same. And I hope you got that from this podcast. Giving up weakens your spirit. Surrender aligns it with power. So you surrender, there's some sort of, I acknowledge there's a power greater than myself that will help me achieve the goals that I want to. And that aligns with the power. We're giving up. It just weakens it because we're going against our inner soul, if you will, or our inner self. And when you release resistance, you unlock clarity, resilience, and flow. And all those are pretty cool things, wouldn't you say? So, this is the path of the conscious warrior. Step in it today. Don't give up, but surrender when it's appropriate. The paradox of giving up versus surrender is not just philosophy, it's a practical path to living with power, peace, and presence. And when you embrace surrender, you no longer see it as defeat, you see it as freedom. If you want to see the show notes on this podcast, you can visit warriormindcoach.com. While you're over there, you can find some more useful information in the way of blog posts and podcasts, and you'll be able to book your power strategy call. Since you'll be on the internet, please follow me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest under Warrior Mind Coach.